Somebody once raised the question, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is around to hear it, does it make a sound? And while I can certainly appreciate the philosophical value of that question, I think the obvious answer is, why yes, of course it does. You see, the credibility of nature is not dependent upon whether or not I am around to validate it. The natural world creates its own sound. It tells its own story. And if you're listening, that story is definitely worth hearing. A couple of weeks ago, while a harsh spring wind was blowing, one of the magnificent spruce trees in my backyard finally came crashing down. With a bit of math and some help from the International Society of Arboriculture, I estimated the tree to be around 100 years old. Given the austerity of the situation, I thought that a few departing words might be appropriate. The First World War had ended only a few short years earlier, and the Spanish flu had just run its course, while our spruce was still tucked away safely inside the folds of the mother cone. Born into the rich soil of the Roaring '20s, it seems to have prospered right along with the rest of the Western world. But fate is a funny thing. For while our tree was only a sapling, a German mechanical engineer by the name of Andreas Steele was developing his very first gas-powered chainsaw. Fortunately, even though its fate was already sealed, our tree wouldn't taste the cold steel of saw teeth for about another 90 years. In the late 20s, while our tree was still quite young, the New York Stock Exchange crashed and the Great Depression began. But trees know very little of economics, and it simply kept on growing while the rest of the world languished. Much farther west, the 1930s gave us the Great Dust Bowl, and in the 40s, the world wept again. Our spruce added another 5 or 6 rings as the nations clashed in the bloodiest war of all, World War II. In 1956, New York State crowned the sugar maple as its state tree. Perhaps our spruce felt a twinge of jealousy. On February the 1st of 1966, the local village of Camden set a single-day snowfall record by receiving 50 inches of snow in a single day. But by now, our tree had 40 rings of its own, and it probably stood at least 40 feet tall. Needless to say, it survived. Somewhere near its 50th ring can be found the memory of July 20th, 1969. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, and presumably another 13 inches or so for spruce kind. In 1970, state bird legislation was passed. Our illustrious spruce began hosting the dainty feet of New York's state bird, the eastern bluebird. And in 1980, our tree's northern cousins were rejoicing. 109 miles to the northeast, as the crow flies, the village of Lake Placid was hosting the 1980 Olympics, and the United States hockey team had just beat out a seasoned Soviet team. 5 years later, in 1985, our old spruce had been firmly rooted for nearly 65 years. And that's the year, well, the year I was born. For the next 35 years, time marched on. The old spruce grew a little slower. The world wept some more, and it rejoiced some more. Many moons passed and many suns rose. Our tree flourished while others were not so fortunate. Millions of seeds never even made it safely into the ground, and countless others met an early demise as they fell prey to the harsh northern elements. Yet our tree towered heroically, until one blustery afternoon in upstate New York, those fibrous strands were stretched beyond their limitations, and the winds finally prevailed. And now all that remains is a pile of camp wood, the crackle of a campfire, and a stump which contains the memories of 100 years. Given enough time, that stump will fade completely. It will sink back into the earth from which it sprang, taking its quiet wisdom with it. So let the hearer take this to heart, for there is a timeless wisdom to be found here. What heights you and I will reach, we may not know, but let us reach nevertheless. Let us grow with each passing day, stretching ourselves in the upward journey. And when we can no longer bow under the weight of the wind, let us fall with grace. May this occasion humble us, may it sober us, and may these glowing embers warm us in the anticipation of the journey that yet lies ahead, wherever that journey may take us. But for today, let us warm ourselves by the heat of the memories we cherish, and may our resiliency not be easily forgotten.